Senhoras e senhores, para entrevistar Bo e Jantje, eu gostaria de chamar ao palco a produtora executiva e criadora Mariana Richard. A criadora, roteirista e diretora Ludmila Naves. O apresentador, produtor, autor e diretor Isidoro. E agora com vocês, Baran, Odar e Jantje Friese.
Well, thanks, Anna, for this presentation. Hi, guys. I feel like I should act normally and kick this off, but I can't pretend that I'm calm in front of you and the creators of Dark and 1899. So I'm glad to be sitting here with you, Jantje and Bo, and with you, Ludmila and Isidoro. So my first question is for this warm audience. Who has seen the series Dark and 1899? Wow, it's fantastic. We will get much more of this panel if you have seen the series. So, Jantje and Bo, you come from the movies, and your film, Who Am I, is an important achievement in your career. If you, in the audience, haven't watched it, you must see. How is the creative journey from feature film to series? And what did this background bring to the creation of such a unique, dense, and yet universal series such as Dark?
Bom dia.
Perfect.
I first want to say that it's really amazing to be here. We've never been to South America, never been to Brazil, never been to Rio, and what a beautiful city. So first of all, I really want to thank you all for allowing us to be here. And to your question, I think the way we approach series, we still do it with a mindset of movie makers, actually. And it was quite a long process to learn how to tackle like such a long tale, like such a long narrative. But in the first season when we came in, we had no idea. We honestly didn't know what a showrunner did. We didn't know how a series worked. I mean, we watched like tons of shows, so we had like a feeling for it, but we approached it like a movie. Even in the way we shot it like a movie. We didn't shoot episode by episode, but we actually shot location by location by location. And I think that was a huge benefit for Dark because we were actually able to work on twists and turns way longer because we didn't finish a first episode. Like we had, like sometimes even the last scene we shot in the entire process could still have been from episode 1. So if we missed something in terms of the mystery or the riddles, we could still do that like on the last shooting day. And I think that was a good approach for the show. And now on the way, obviously, we've finally learned how to do it. But it was a long process, yeah.
I feel that Dark looks like a super feature film. You thought in like the first season, it's equal first act or the setup of a movie, and the second season is like the second act?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted also to thank Rio 2C to inviting us to this beautiful city. We walked through Rio yesterday, 7 hours, I think. Used the metro, went all the beaches up and then through the city back. It was so amazing. You can't imagine. We're from Berlin, Germany. It's gray, it's cold, it's ugly as hell. So we are very thankful to be in Rio. Thank you. Yeah, as Jantje said, as we had no clue how to do it, we felt like, okay, we have a clue about movies and how to tell movies, so let's just use that and don't tell Netflix that we never did a show. So the season 1 was definitely the first act, the season 2 was the second act, and the third season was the third act. And that's how we built this entire show. But we learned a lot of other things too, becoming showrunners through all these years that I think that's maybe not many people know, but usually in a movie the main hero or the female hero, she goes through an arc and she learns something, and at the end a very mean bad person turns out to become a good person or learns how to love. And in TV shows people don't go through this arc. They don't learn anything. Like Tony Soprano in The Sopranos stays Tony Soprano until the very end. He kills, he betrays, he lies, he's a gangster boss.
And we love him.
And we love him. That's the beauty of it. That's why we love doing shows, to be honest, because it's very flawed characters, very real characters, I would say, close to our lives, because we're not heroes. No one is a hero, goes through an amazing arc, or most of us, at least the two of us, we're not heroes. So, yeah.
And in the third season, you could explore more codes of the series, because there's so much genre codes that you input during the first season, and the second season you explore more, and then the third season is like is completely it's something that you need to watch Dark, the first and the second season, very attentive to enjoy the third season.
Yeah, I mean, the third season, as Bo said, is like the third act, so it was all building to the resolution and then like finally getting all the puzzle pieces into place. And then, in a way, Jonas, just like in a feature film, has to make a decision, right? Am I going to be this person? Am I going to be that person? And eventually, to untie the knot, he does change in a way. But until then, he just stays stupid Jonas trying to to cut the loop, and it's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were big fans of Lost back then when we watched that show. And I think they did an amazing job, even if some people think that the show went too long and at the end it was not as satisfying as everyone was hoping for. I still think it's an amazing show, and we just love riddles and puzzles. And when we were watching that show back then, we were constantly in the internet trying to read code on websites where they were hiding secret and puzzle pieces, and we were obsessed about that, and we wanted to create something similar as an experience for the audience with Dark, that when you watch it, you really need a notebook and you need a pen. You have to rewind, you have to rewatch maybe sometimes sequences or an entire episode to understand anything. So yeah, I think it worked out a little bit, because there are a lot of nerds out there like us who really like that too, which is beautiful.
We can see this points of narrative of Lost, and you are very deep and coherent in genre in your films, in Dark and 1899. Can you speak to our industry about the relation to the themes that you choose in your projects that's more than just explore genre as Lost, for example, and how to develop a well-designed premise in terms of genre?
I think for us, what we discovered early on working on feature films was that theme is the most important thing. It's basically the soul of everything. So you can have, like when you start a project, you can have an idea that's like more plot oriented, or you can have an idea that's more character oriented. It doesn't matter where you start, but once you sit down, you have to figure out theme first. If you don't know what the core theme of your story is, it will just fall apart. So that's what we always do. We try to figure out what are we actually tackling here. Like, this is not a story about Jonas saving the world. It is like what we were interested in was making something about quantum physics. That sounds really dry. And if you go to Netflix and say, hey, I want to do a show about quantum physics, it's probably not going to be a good sell. But like coming from that idea of, okay, so what does that actually mean? What does it stand for, also philosophically? And then we very fast came to the dichotomy of free will and determinism. And that's what you need to do. Like, you need to find two different arguments to one theme so that you have your protagonist who thinks free will exists and I can change something, but he's actually stuck in a world that proves to be different. It's like a cause and effect loop, and whenever he tries to do something, it just turns out to be inside that cause and effect loop. So this is where we're always coming from theme, and we're trying to tie that and weave that into plot and character, and it all needs to come together. And then obviously, that theme needs to be personal too. If you don't tell something that's like connected to yourself and to your own personal truth, you don't have anything to tell. Like, you can have a great idea for a heist movie and like all these great action pieces, and it's going to be amazing. But if it has nothing to do with something that you explored about humanity or how people behave or why greed is, like, maybe if that's the theme, like it's greed in your heist movie, then you need to find out, what does greed mean to me? Why am I greedy at some moments? Do I feel like I deserve more than I was handed out? Or like, you have to make it personal, and you have to have a statement, like there needs to be something in there, otherwise it's just shallow.
Yeah, I can only add that theme for us is almost like a music instrument that you add onto a story, and that is constantly playing, mostly just one tone. But that tone like goes through the whole story the entire time and gives you a certain feeling that makes you eerie and makes you feel weird maybe at the beginning, but then at a certain moment it makes you feel also home, and it also helps to have something like that to talk to actors and just to tell them every scene is about that theme, not just 2 or 3 scenes. All of the scenes need to be part of that theme. Heat, for example, the movie from Michael Mann, is one of my favorite movies, and not because it's a bank robbery, cool action movie, but because it has one theme the entire time, and the whole music delivers that theme as well, sort of, at least for me, and it's about loneliness. And you have these 2 men in LA, and I lived in LA, and it's a town where you feel very lonely for like very easily. So for me, this movie was amazing because the entire 3 hours it's about just loneliness in this city, and then they add action pieces to it and make a bank robbery film about that. But I think it's really, really important, but it's a process also. You don't know like, okay, we're gonna do this theme and then that's it. Like, you learn while you're going through development what actually the theme would be, and you start with one and it might change completely to the end, but maybe it's just a variation of the theme that you started with. But it's always a part of the process, but at a certain point you need to stick to it.
Yeah, and your explanation is so deep, and even killing kids in your story, because you love kill kids in your stories, in your series, and
you can't kill enough kids, honestly. Like,
I think there is Neil in the end of this panel about this subject. And Ludmila, who also loves kill people in her stories, has a question.
Yeah. So guys, what do you think were the strengths when you were pitching and selling a TV show like yours? And what's your approach in general to complex narrative storytelling?
Should I start? Well, I think it might sound lazy, but we really think you have to keep it very short, the pitch. Like, if you want to sell a story that, especially like Dark, that is so complex, you can start like, it's about quantum physics, and we have a lot of timelines and a lot of characters, and you will not follow most of the time who's doing what, but it's going to be really amazing, and great music, by the way. this doesn't work. You have to keep it very short, that the people who have to pay for it, basically, or have to spend the time and money to do it, feel like that the core idea is definitely something that is very interesting and very intriguing. And our pitch on Dark actually was really a phone pitch first. Like afterwards we wrote a pitch paper for them, but it was a phone pitch where we basically said this is a small town with 4 families, and children are disappearing, and it's about the drama of these families, and they're all connected in a way. And what they will find out, that there's a cave system. When you go through it, you can do time travel. And they were like completely hooked, because they had all important ingredients for an interesting story, I guess, where you have emotional family drama, but then a sci-fi element to it that still felt grounded. Because if we would have just pitched the time travel idea, it would have felt very cold, I guess. But if you would just pitch the family drama, it would be like, well, we've seen that many, many times. But I think that mix made it very interesting for them. And they had no clue, honestly, we also we had no clue where this will go to. But keep it as simple and, again, emotional, with an emotional, interesting character or character network. Keep it simple and short. This is also what we teach to everyone who's working with us. Like, if you can't pitch your story in a very short way, you don't have a story. You will get into trouble at a certain point while you were writing it. And so pitching for us is very, very important, just to figure out what story we want actually to tell.
And let's do a little time travel here. Thinking in the industry now, in 2023, and your pitching in 2015, do you believe that Dark would be approved by a streaming service nowadays?
No.
I agree. And do you want compliments, please?
No, my answer is the same. No, unfortunately not. I think things have changed a lot. And maybe not in a good way, but maybe also in a good way. I don't know. There are also great shows out there, like Last of Us. Honestly, we really enjoyed that show, because it went again into interesting directions, how storytelling can also work. But I think, like, as the market has changed, as the consumer has changed, how you consume things. We have a 14-year-old daughter that consumes things in a different way that we did when we were younger. So Dark would, I think, not happen these days.
Good.
So you guys mentioned in some interviews you had that you had a lot of freedom of creation, at least in Dark. So how important you guys think it is to have this type of freedom in developing a series like this? And how did you gain this trust and freedom? And if you think about your future as creators, do you expect the same amount of freedom? How do you manage this type of relation with the market?
I mean, we got like exceptionally lucky when we started out with Netflix, because there was no German team yet, there was no European Netflix infrastructure. It was really just Amsterdam, where you had marketing people and press people, and a very, very small international unit. So the way that we went into it was really fake it until you make it. We just pretended to know what we were doing, when we actually had absolutely no clue. But we got lucky because we had a great executive with Kelly Lügenbiel, who also started at the same time that we started with Netflix. So it was really going on this journey together. And she was very much a person who supported creative vision. And I mean, that was also the thing that how Netflix got so many creatives in the first place, was really, we're supporting creatives, we're there to support your idea. Basically, we're just giving you the space, the money to create what's like inside of you. And so that was amazing. But I mean, we have to look at the reality of how it is right now. Like Netflix is a huge company and has grown immensely. So the approach into what kind of stories they want to tell, or also how they work with creatives, has definitely changed. We gained trust through the stuff that we then eventually did, but with 1899, for example, we still get notes. We still fight over notes. We're also not very good in taking notes. We always say we are, but we're actually not. So it's always, I think for us it's the same as for everyone. Like you constantly, it's two parties that sometimes want something different, and you have to come to a agreement on where to go. So it sometimes is a struggle for us as well.
But it's actually, I think it's actually two parties who want the same at the end. They want a good show that is successful. You know, it's really that easy. But how to get there, the way how to do things, they might differ in some moments. And I think that's fair because everyone approaches things from a different angle sometimes. But what we really loved at the beginning regarding the trust is that we always compare to horse racing. You're the person who coming to a horse race, you have the money and you bet on a horse, you know, and say, I think this horse will reign the next run, whatever. And then you should not run next to the horse the entire time through that race and say, come on, faster, a little bit left, a little bit right. No, stop it, do this. Oh, I should do that. Like you let the horse race. And if it wins, awesome. If it doesn't win, you can still shoot the horse, you know? So I think that's really important that it's a risky business anyways, what we're doing for everyone. There's no algorithm that tells you how to do successful things. Most successful things actually just happened for a certain reason, being at the right time, at the right place, for the right audience. And I think, if you just let the horse run itself, it's more helpful than actually yelling at the horse the entire time.
Yeah, and let the horses, non-English horses, run too. Isidore has questions and probably also wants to kill people in his stories.
Always. Primeiramente, bom dia, Rio DC, tudo bem? So guys, you guys are partners in life, partners in crime, creative partners. What kind of arrangements, what you do, you know, especially because you have a really special arrangement where you are writing the whole show, Bo is directing the whole show, so it's a really deep connection. So how is the process, and especially if you have any tips for writers, directors, teams here for us?
We've been doing this now together for 21 years, we had a lot of practice. But obviously it's difficult, especially if you're in a love relationship as well. We met at film school, and what we learned really early on in our partnership, which was not about work in the beginning, was that we really liked the same things. So it was really, we liked the same movies, we kind of thought the same thoughts, though there was this idea of a shared creative vision, and that obviously helped. So I think going in a creative partnership, it's really important that you're at least 70% in the same space, because otherwise it's really tricky. I had a boyfriend before who was also a director. Didn't work out. So it's you just really need to know that you want to do the same thing. And now we've been through such a long process of trial and error where we fight, we still fight, but not as we used to. When we were pregnant with our daughter and we shot The Silence, the first movie after film school, I was pregnant like this, and we were fighting in front of the whole crew, and everyone was like, oh my God, what are they doing? I think they're going to split up. She's going to be alone with a baby. Everyone was super afraid. But we just had our argument, and then, oh, it's lunchtime. What do you want to get, honey? We could just
Yeah, we always fight around lunchtime. Always. It's just hunger, heat, or thirst.
That's like the biggest tip is to never talk about anything creative before lunch. Like just have lunch
I agree.
first.
Or another big tip is if you want to get a pitch through an executive at a streamer, do it around lunchtime. They really take the pitch, because if they are hungry, they're like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah, let's do this show. I'm so hungry.
Also, if you want to push something through edit, that's also a good strategy. Like if you really, if you do that before lunchtime, the executives are really worn down, and if you just like keep pushing and had a little snack before.
We will never get something pushed through now, because they will always.
Now we do it before dinner.
Yeah.
She's telling.
But yeah, I want to add something to it. It's whoever is here and wants to become a showrunner, please don't do it alone. It's such a hard job, exhausting job, and it's also a fun job. It's a cool job, but it's very exhausting. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of time of your life. You lose a lot of hair, you lose everything, honestly. So don't do it alone. We don't get how someone can showrun a show completely alone. Like, we really don't understand that burden.
We've split up our work, like we have different work fields, so we're not doing everything together. We just trust that the other one is making good choices. So I think that's what really helps, because if you have to tackle it alone, it's hard.
Yeah, and speaking about collaboration, I remember when I was watching Dark, sometimes it made me think about the concepts, the particular concepts of this series, and I was always thinking, the writer's room is like a super room with pictures and lines and notes, like 10 people working together, researching, and how was the writer's room physically set up, in fact?
We've been through a lot of different versions of writers' rooms, basically trying out what can work and what can't work. I don't know how the situation in Brazil is, but in Germany, the concept of writers' room is still quite new, and also it goes very much against the writing tradition in Germany. In Germany, you become a writer and you're an auteur, so it's really about everything that comes like out of you, and it's not about craft, and it's not about understanding that you might have to put your craft towards like a head writer who has the idea, and you need to follow that head writer. So it's still very difficult. And with Dark, we had our first room was more like the Danish room. I don't know if you've heard about that. The Danish room, compared to the American room, is smaller. They usually are just 3 to 4 people. And that's what we did in Dark the first season. So it was me and 3 more writers. And it was a great experience. I still all love them very much, but it didn't work out quite as it should have worked out. So they all wrote like a first draft, but then I did complete rewrites because it just didn't feel coherent. It was very, very difficult. And I felt very bad about it. I thought that I failed somehow as someone running the room, that I didn't make my ideas clear enough, or I didn't talk about characters enough for everyone to understand like who these people actually are. So I thought, okay, second season, let's give it another try. Everyone has watched the first season, so it should be quite clear who those people are, how they talk, like what they want. But it didn't work out again. Like it really felt that every script felt so different from the other writer's script, and it never felt like a coherent thing. And then I figured that it has a lot to do with the mystery genre. It's very, very difficult to create mystery in a room, because a lot of the creation, when it comes to the puzzle pieces and all of that, it happens like in one head, and it's very hard to explain that to everyone, and it's very much a flowing process. So I kind of took the blame off from me, failing again in Dark Season 2, and just thought it's the genre. And that's the problem. And then the third season I actually wrote alone, because I didn't think that bringing all of it to a conclusion would make sense with more voices. But that's not something I can recommend. Like, there's a reason why there are writers' rooms, and it's very hard to tackle that on your own.
I think all the series has a particular process, and you need to respect this process too. And in some situations, you can manage a huge writer's room and with a lot of writers, but other kinds of series, especially when you have something so authentic as dark, I think it's difficult to share and manage. So it's important to share your story here with us, because we don't need to think that all the projects need to be same and has the same structure of writer's room. You need to feel and understand each project and the particular characteristics of this. So, Amy?
So guys, we, especially me and Luj, we work a lot with genre here in Brazil. And even though Germany was like the birthplace of genre filmmaking, with Fritz Lang, with German Expressionism, we haven't thought of Germany as a powerhouse in genre. So how was the process of starting to work with genre, especially using references? What kind of references were you watching, consuming, using, and how did you use your reference with the whole crew and between yourselves?
Well, genre didn't work in Germany for a very, very long time, and honestly, it's still really hard. Germany is more famous. Germany likes to do comedies and did that for a very, very long time. Very broad comedies, not like the British comedies where it's actually funny, but more like broad comedies. Therefore, we grew up with genre movies entirely from childhood on, to be honest. We always watched basically everything that was out there. And we honestly also don't believe in genre. That's a term that people use to put it in a drawer to say, what is this? I guess sci-fi. So the marketing knows what to do with sci-fi, and they have to, we only believe in two genres, good stories and bad stories. And I think any good story can be any genre, and any bad story can be also any genre. But for us, it was a long struggle, to be honest. We already started at film school doing genre stories, and they always question it, because especially at German film schools, it's a lot about the auteur filmmaking and mostly about social criticism things and like political movies, all these things.
So I went to a German film school here in Brazil, and I didn't know that.
Yeah. So any film school is doing that. And I think that's fine for certain filmmakers, but not every filmmaker wants to tell that story. And I think a great genre story is actually a great social criticism. Like every serial killer, psycho thriller, whatever, is actually a really good social criticism, if it does a job great. Like Seven is a great film because it is it criticizes society at the end. It's not about just a serial killer killing people. He is criticizing society. And when I watched that movie, that was the first movie I actually went out of the theater, bought me another ticket and went again in, because I was like blown away that a serial killer movie can do that. But what we really do like to do is genre mixes, because I think genre is really like telling a story in codes, and the audience usually know those codes, which is nice. But there have been so many stories told in codes already, so everyone knows every code. We really like to mix it, so it becomes a bit more interesting, and it makes us become more creative, I would say. Dark actually was a combination of two ideas that we had, and when Netflix approached us and said do you have a show idea for us? We lied and said yes, of course, and we went back for a week and went through all the things that we were working on, and we're like, what should we pitch there? And we had a small town crime show idea with families, and then someone is doing something to those children, and we had a big time travel action trilogy movie idea like Matrix, you know, where, yeah. And once we combined these two ideas, it blew our mind and made us very creative, and we were like, oh, okay, what if this could happen and that could happen? And I think a genre mix helps a lot and is more interesting than a pure genre thing. I don't know if that answers your question, sorry.
Yeah, it does, thank you.
And on that note, let's talk about technology. I'd like to show a video with the behind the scenes of 1899. There is a video. No? Okay.
I couldn't believe what I was watching.
I remember the first time I walked on the volume, and I was like, wow.
You can literally take actors into a real space whilst not being there.
Well, I tried to describe it to my son, and I just said, oh.
It's like the biggest TV you'll ever see, and we just act in front of it.
You see the whole landscape in front of you, so you're really looking at the sea.
And it looks real. It really looks real.
Someone at Netflix told us about the volume technology. At the beginning, we didn't really take it serious, to be honest.
Venturing into something that's completely new is very difficult, and it helps if the people at the table understand what each and everyone is talking about.
It was for us really important that we're a cool group of people that are willing to learn new things.
For us, it was essential to stay here in Germany. Studio Balzberg is one of the oldest studios in the world. Fritz Lang's Metropolis was shot in there. Being able to put new technology in there and continue that history is fantastic for us.
The volume is an incredible artistic tool to work with, but it also is quite a beast.
We have 350 square meter shooting area, 270 degrees of viewing angles, and as an industry first, a revolving stage, which can basically move the entire set and enable the filmmaker to shoot 360 degrees in whatever environment he could think of.
It's a huge help for us, so we don't have to travel to the desert, nor to the North Pole, nor to the glaciers and stuff. You can change that within a minute.
It's so real that I remember a lot of us, when we first stepped onto the volume, got seasick when we were watching the waves in the background go up and down.
The other great thing that we have in here is a rain rig. And this is something where I think nobody believes that this is possible. And I'm not talking about drizzle, I'm talking about proper rain, where we've been all standing in, the actors been standing in, we all got really wet. It was amazing.
You don't need to have a part of your brain focused on projecting and imagining. You can just receive it.
It's really fun. You're like a little child. You create worlds, and then you add stuff here and add there, and step by step you're getting closer, creating a reality that doesn't feel like it was created, but it actually exists.
We get to be pioneers. We get to work on things we have no idea about.
The ambience, the peacefulness of this set, they managed to create something that was so, I don't know, the most beautiful set I've ever seen in my life.
I just can't believe that we've been able to make a series on here. It's utterly, utterly thrilling.
Everyone will experience so many new worlds. It's a kaleidoscope, horror, beauty, mystery. It's full of surprises.
So after seeing that, you guys said that you are old school filmmakers. You like to go to locations. You like to work in the real thing. But we just saw the opposite of it. Like you guys are creating new technology, creating new innovation. So how was for you to tread this path, you know, to walk in the innovation and the tradition and join these two forces?
Well, we're also very practical filmmakers, and when we started 99 to develop, unfortunately the pandemic started too, so we were really struggling how to make this show, and at some point we were even close to not doing it, because it was supposed to be a set piece built of a ship somewhere in Malta in a water tank, and like very traditional, in a very traditional way, and we couldn't travel, and therefore we were looking at each other and saying like, well, then we can't do this show. Like, how can we create this? And as I said in that film, Netflix told us about that technology, and we looked at it and felt like this is actually our solution, how to solve this problem. And while we were then working with it, we fell in love with it because we're also like kids. Like, we really love to play with toys and try to find out new ways how to do them. And especially after 3 seasons of Dark, where you like have a certain mechanism to do things, we wanted to do also something different this time, and therefore the volume technology was amazing at that moment. It was at the right time, at the right time to be used.
We just saw how it was shot, but just before that, how it changed your pre-production, like how it changed, you know, how long were you working on it by the time you were on set?
Yeah, that was really a very long prep time, because literally everyone who worked on that had no clue how it works, to be honest, because it's still a technology that not many people have used. When we started, it was the people from Mandalorian who used that successfully for that Disney show, and we spoke to them and asked a lot of questions, and they were super beautiful, nice people telling us what we should not do, which is the best tip, like making a list of just don't do it. We tried for also a long time and just don't do it. So that was very helpful to talk to them, and therefore we prepped almost a year before shooting, which was a very long time, very exhausting. When we started the actual shoot, it felt like we already had shot a lot of things, so we were already a little bit exhausted. But it needed a time to understand the technology and to embrace it in the right way, and to make sure that you don't make mistakes on set, because that was the most important part for us, because there it goes back to that we are actually traditional filmmakers. We don't like visual effects at the end. Like, we love storytelling and we love actors in a set telling us that story with emotions. So we said from the beginning, if we use that technology, we want to make sure that there's never a moment on set where it's about the technology, but it's always about the actors and the story. And therefore we prepped almost a year to get there.
I can't pretend that when I watch a video of the behind the scenes of 1899, listen to you speaking about the solutions and the process and the solutions that you create to this complex series, multilingual and with virtual production, a lot of effects. Why was the series cancelled?
Someone from Netflix here?
It's your time to run. Go.
Because that's a simple ask Netflix.
It's I mean, there's I mean, you already know. It's just a lot of people watched it, but they've changed their metrics in terms of what a success is. So it was in terms of our budget and what they got back of it. It just didn't make the cut for them.
Yeah, you have to be fair. Like, I mean, you saw it in in that making of thing. It was not a cheap show, definitely not, and therefore it was a big risk for everyone. And unfortunately, that risk would have been maybe a success a couple of years ago, but nowadays, that's what we talked about earlier. success is something different, and because I don't want to piss at their house, you know, I'm still with them, but I totally get it and I understand it, and on the other hand, I don't understand it at all.
So you guys, after the first season, so you became owners of a production company. So how was the transition, like the learnings of the process? How was different? You were telling me yesterday that your first, you were a producer before being a writer, but how is the new perspective, like producing the show you wrote? And do you feel that when you create a show or produce, you have to have a different approach for global projects from local ones, or how do you guys see this difference?
It's very difficult to answer because I think the way that we've approached everything ever is always for a global audience. So I don't even know what a local show is. Like, I don't have the mindset to understand what that actually means. I don't think I ever understood. For me, it's just stories, and if they are, if they have an emotional core and a personal truth, I think then they are interesting for everyone. And I've never understood the other perspective. So I'm still struggling also with a new strategy of local for local, because I'm a local girl, like, and I'm gonna stay firm on that idea. And I think in terms of being producers, it's the exact same. Like, the way we approached stuff was always with a producer's mindset. Like, even when we weren't producers, we always wanted budget transparency. We always wanted to be in control of things and talk about things. And now we just finally have the stamp on it that we're actually allowed to do it. So it was a very natural process to also have a production company. It was a learning curve, definitely, but I think it's something that we always had in us, especially if you want to be a showrunner. You have to be a producer as well. You have to have that mindset, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, I think it's really a lot about control, because there are so many moments while you're doing something like what we're doing that you might lose control in many ways. It's not all about the money thing, but there's constantly the danger of losing control about the story, about the actors, about the crew, because they are all hungry and they worked for many, many weeks there. So the more you have control, it helps you to make that process and create things easier. And having a production company helps a lot, I would say. So you don't have another partner you have to argue with the entire time. But again, it's also a burden. We don't recommend it to everyone. So it's not just like, oh, I have a company, awesome. Yeah, you have a certain responsibility to get there.
And as creator outside of US that achieved worldwide success, you produced 1899 as multilingual series, and now developing your next series to Netflix too. You know, Netflix loves them in English. So, do you think that the appetite for no-English projects, such as Lilyhammer, Dark, Money Heist, Squid Game, will remain? And will we still see global projects, sophisticated and unique as yours, going global?
Yeah, no, I think definitely. I think that's not going to change. I think the market has opened up, and there's a lot of opportunity, but you have to be very, very realistic about the market space we're in right now. So I think the chance to get to that place is to really be aware of the budget, and if you manage to create something in a lower range, risk-free, that still travels, then I think you can still have that Squid Game was quite a cheap show, and the first season of Dark was quite a cheap show. So I think it's the problem is really getting through the executives, and the only way to get through is to not be too expensive. That's unfortunate, hopefully the world will change in a few years again, and we can all throw money around. But right now, it's just the truth, and I think everyone needs to be flexible to that truth.
Yeah, but if you, and that's criticism, what I will say now, if you stay local for local, I think it's really hard to get there. It's really, I think that's a very dangerous way to see projects. I think you should not do that. Should always, like City of God, for example, that's many, many years ago, I guess, was, of course, that's like a local story, but it traveled globally. And that's important. Like, you can do something that feels very local. Also Dark felt very German, I would say, because there's no humor, it's really dark. But the approach was always, this needs to work everywhere. The story needs to work everywhere. And I think there's no storyteller out there who just wants to tell his story to a small town where he lives. He wants his story to be told everywhere and to be read everywhere or watched everywhere, or like a musician, you want that the whole world is listening to that song and not just your mom, you know? So I think it's very dangerous, and it's not just a Netflix thing, it's a global thing with a lot of new players out there. Let's just do local for local. I think that's a big mistake.
I agree completely. And moving to the end of the panel, as we already said, you love to kill kids. Tell us a little about Something is Killing the Children, your next project with Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, the title was already the selling point, honestly. When we heard that title, we're like, oh, this fits very well to us.
Who hurt you, Bo?
What?
Who hurt you when you were a kid?
No, I think, honestly, I make jokes about that. We have a daughter, I love kids. Don't get me wrong.
Yes,
but I
joke,
think
we
love to kill children because it's the worst thing that could ever happen to us. I think that's really the worst thing. Our first movie was a weird, dark, pedophile movie about two pedophiles who killed children in the 80s and then 70s, and then 23 years later they meet again. So it's a constant, that's our fear, to lose a child. So therefore I just make jokes about my, like, I've never went to therapy, maybe I should go to therapy. But, so we do like killing children, and we read the comic and we loved it because it hit all the notes that we love. And so we spoke to the comic artist, James Tinian, and he basically loved the same things that we loved, like Stephen King stories, and we shared so many elements, and we felt like we have to adapt this for a show, and he trusted us to do that. We're still in development, trying to get the right angle for this show, and it also means this is our first US show, so it would mean like another checklist that we have wanted to do. Not sure if we will tackle it right and if we will be successful. We might fail too, but we do like risks, yeah, so we're looking forward to do that, and not just because we can kill children.
And and how is the process being different, working with an IP, working with someone else's story and bringing to your world? How's that being, are you writing all of this show again?
We've actually done it before with The Silence, the first movie I talked about, which was based on a novel, and I think adaptations are really, really hard. You have to find a very personal angle to a story where someone else had a very personal angle. So you have to kind of take the material and make it your own, while staying true to the material. And there are like different ways to do that and to tackle that. So it's really finding us inside what's already there. And right now we're still in the early development process, so there is no writer's room yet. We're still in the concept phase, and basically we're just, it's the two of us.
I think we are in the ending of the panel. So it was a remarkable moment, and hope you enjoy it. And thank you, Rio 2C, to this opportunity. I think I have a message to all the executives and players here. Woohoo! No, it's a message because they inspire me. So trust more in the creators and independent producers. We are working from people to people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil.
Dankeschön.